What is up, Flick fans, and welcome back to my channel. I asked you guys if you would like to see a tier list of the Men in Black franchise, what we have so far, and that's what we're doing today. This will also be a ranking video, so as I do the tier list, I will tell you guys where they place on my rankings. We're going to talk about all 4 of these movies. I know it's odd doing a tier list with just 4 movies, but hey, I figured it would be something fun to do on a Saturday morning, and that's what we're doing today. I need your comments down below. Which Men in Black movie is your favorite? Which one is your least favorite? And how did you feel about the new one? My review is on the channel right now, but this is not a review. This is a tier list video. So let's start with the first movie on the list, and we're actually going to go in order that the franchise came out. And the first movie is the original, the OG Men in Black, and I'm going to start this thing off, and I'm going to place this first Men in Black movie on the great tier because this movie still holds up for me. It's still, in my opinion, great. I love the chemistry from Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith. I think Barry Sonnenfeld as a director, he's not the best. I even think he's not a very good director, but this movie was just lightning in a bottle. It was magic. The chemistry mixed with the plot, which isn't too much like the second Men in Black. It isn't far-fetched like the third Men in Black. It's just simple. And the simplicity, especially for the time, is something that was needed in a movie back then. That was needed in a movie like this because this concept was so new to people, and the simplicity really kept you in the plot, and the chemistry allowed you to roll with the characters throughout the movie. Vincent D'Onofrio is another standout in this film. As the villain, he walks around like this and talks, and he contorts his body and his face, and I know they use makeup and prosthetics and things. I just think he's so good in the movie. So you have a good villain, you have 2 great leads, awesome chemistry, not a lot of side characters that don't do anything. It's another issue that I have with the other movies in this franchise. There are side characters like crazy that just don't play an important part. They're not vital to the movie, but they're in there for some reason. In this movie, you had Zed, who is really funny, and you have the dog who pops up here and there, but really, that's about it. That's about all of the needless things that you have. It's a simple plot, a great premise, and the first movie holds so much magic. Like I said, lightning in a bottle, and I still, to this day, I went back and watched it last week in preparation for this video. Still love it. Still think it doesn't hold up all the way. Some of the CGI is a little bit off, and the special effects, for the most part, they're not the best, but I still love the movie. Next up, we're talking M2B. According to the poster, no, this is Men in Black 2. This was a movie that as a kid, this was on my television all the time. And when I was younger, I really enjoyed it. I thoroughly enjoyed seeing the characters back together again. He goes on the search for Kay because, of course, at the end of the first one, he neuralized Kay. Spoilers, I guess, for a movie that's this old. But he has to go back and get them. In that regard, I feel like they undid some things in the first movie that I think ended off the first movie perfectly. Now, you had to get Tommy Lee Jones back, but I think there could have been a better way to do it, right? There needed to be a more compelling reason instead of just this villain that wasn't menacing. She was overly sexualized, and I know this was a movie from a long time ago, but she's not the best. As an actor, she's not the best. I don't think they wrote her character the best, and Johnny Knoxville is her sidekick. I don't think he did a terrible job. Honestly, a lot of people hate that character. Some people compare him to Jar Jar Binks. I don't think he's that bad. I just think he's Johnny Knoxville, so people look at that character and they say, he's doing too much. No, after rewatching this movie, I'm just like, yeah, he's a tad bit annoying, but he's not over the top like some other things are in this film. And when I say over the top, I mean you have things that happen in this movie that were not even established in the first film. The first film, there are some elements that are over the top, right? But it's a movie about aliens coming down from space and a secret organization of people. I can buy some things, but in this film, you have characters like jumping in the air and doing Matrix-style kicks for like 10 seconds at a time, and it comes out of nowhere. It's so random. And then you have these side characters, like I was talking about a bit earlier, that come in here and they distract you from the movie, from what is really supposed to be important about this plot. And if you think about it, this is a heartfelt plot. This is a guy going back to get his partner out of his everyday normal life and snap him back into this world that means a lot to him. And you can tell that when he gets his memory back. But all of these other weird, outlandish, I like to say Barry Sonnenfeld things that he brings in this movie. He's like, oh, the first one really worked. Let's make it even more weird and even more for kids and take away some of the things that we loved about the first one, and we didn't need that, right? I like that he has a particular style and he accepts the fact that he's going to go over the top with it, but this movie was just too much. And watching it today compared to when I watched it as a kid, I still liked what I like about the characters and Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith. Of course, their chemistry is great, but the things that didn't work really didn't work this time around. And because of that, I have to place this movie on the meh tier because at the end of the day, it's just really messy. It's a messy movie. It felt like it just didn't necessarily know where it wanted to go. It feels like a combination of scenes, some of which work. Other scenes really don't work. Some of them are complete busts, and it's just a sloppy film. And that's really all I have to say about it. Next up is Men in Black 3, and this is another one going in. I was afraid it was going to be not a rehash of Men in Black 2, but another movie that was too far over the top. And it is over the top. Looking back at it, I feel like it's a movie that's dated, and it only came out in 2012. It's only 7 years ago. It should not feel dated if it came out the same year as The Avengers, but comparing the special effects of this film after watching it on my nice television screen, so it should have looked good, it didn't look all that good, right? The special effects are sloppy. When Will Smith is jumping off of the building, time traveling, the time travel which was never really established how or why or what it is or where it came from. Okay, I can look past that. The green screen is so bad, right? And the CGI in general, it's so bad. It's so cartoony, and it comes back to Barry Sonnenfeld coming back to direct this movie once again. This was right before he directed 9 Lives. By the way, you guys know what that movie is? You don't ever watch it. But that's the kind of director Barry Sonnenfeld is. I was afraid his style was going to creep in like it did in the second one and kind of ruin the movie, but there's something about this film. There's this heart here, right? They didn't just make a sequel to make money, because these movies, they've made a good chunk of money, but all that's went into them, if you look this up, you'll be able to find it online, they've not been very profitable films, right? So it feels to me like they made this movie because they wanted to give these characters a proper ending, and you can tell that in the final few scenes when they tie everything together. And some people are going to look at this and say, oh, it was so shoehorned, it was so obvious that they could have done this with these characters. And I understand that, right? It is an obvious thing to do, but it was so touching and so heartwarming, and Josh Brolin did such a good job as Tommy Lee Jones from the past. You can't help but to watch it and get a little tear in your eye going, yeah, this is like my childhood rounding out. This is a beautiful way to end these character stories. And I can't believe after all of the silliness of this movie, some things really work. Once again, I feel like I say this about this entire franchise, but Josh Brolin is great. Tommy Lee Jones, when he is on screen, he is awesome. There are side characters that come in. Some side characters are a bit annoying, even though they're played by awesome actors. Other side characters are fun. They're fun to watch, right? Jermaine Clement comes in as the villain, and as the villain did in 1, he shines. He plays 2 versions of himself, each version significantly different, something I didn't notice the first few times I watched this movie, but going back and watching it again, you really got to see his performance, right? His character wasn't written as strongly as I think the character was from the first Men in Black, but he was really good in this role. And the third act, as messy as the CGI is, and as cliche as the plot gets, it's really fun, right? The scene when Will Smith, he's dodging the things. Now, he should have never said left, right, left. The audience, we can figure that out. You don't need to spell it out. That's like unneeded, not exposition, but it's just unneeded dialogue in that moment. There are things throughout the movie that are like that, but that scene was really fun, right? Because he travels back and he does it all over again. They utilize time travel in similar ways that Doctor Strange did a few years later, right? They utilized it in a fun way. They didn't explain it very well, but they did fun things. They made this movie fun, and they gave it a heartfelt ending, and Will Smith, Tommy Lee Jones, Agent J, Agent K, I think they had a nice ending. I think the movie could have been better, but the ending to their particular storyline was nice, and because of me going on this giant spiel, I am going to place Men in Black 3 on the okay tier because I think it's an okay movie. It's pushing the good mark. I can't quite get it there because that's like a 7 out of 10 for me. I'm still at the 6 out of 10 range. But it's still a positive movie, and at the end of the day, I think it's okay. Everybody wants to tell me there are some bad Men in Black films. There are some awful Men in Black films. According to this tier list, I don't think there are bad, or I get the argument why, right? I'm placing MIB International, MIB International on the meh tier, because I do think it's a meh movie, right? And you can tell from this list, I have Men in Black 1 at 1, Men in Black 3 at 2. If I had to place Men in Black International and Men in Black 2, I would put Men in Black International actually in my number 3 spot. So I'm going to switch those. If it'll let me, yes, I'm going to switch those. And Men in Black 2 is my least, just by a slight margin, favorite Men in Black film. And I'm not saying Men in Black International is a good movie, because clearly I don't think it is. But there are likable things in it. You start out with Hemsworth and Tessa Thompson's chemistry. The chemistry is what sold the original trilogy. The chemistry is what sells this movie as well, except I just didn't find this filmmaking as interesting, right? Sonnenfeld with the first 3, it's over-exaggerated, it's over the top, it's too weird for me sometimes, but at least there was a style to it. F. Gary Gray, while he is a stylistic director, I don't think he was able to flex his chops very much in this movie. I think this was the studio looking at him and saying, you're going to direct this exactly how we tell you to direct this. This is a formulaic studio blockbuster movie. We need something to fill this time slot this summer. What are we going to do? Men in Black. Not made a Men in Black movie in a while. Let's make a Men in Black movie. Let's fill that time slot. And unfortunately, that's what they did, right? The chemistry is great. Hemsworth is good, even though his character doesn't have a great story arc. Liam Neeson, I like him in this role, but you're supposed to buy the fact that he has this relationship with Hemsworth's character, and you just don't buy it because they never do anything in terms of character development there, and they try to develop Thompson's character at the beginning of the movie, but they don't do a very good job. She just starts out, she is the stoic character at the beginning, she's a stoic character in the middle, and she's a stoic character at the end, and there's never really any story progression, right? Tommy Lee Jones is that character in the other movies, but there is a progression. There is an arc in each individual film. There aren't very many character arcs that worked for me in this movie, and she has this affinity, without spoiling too much, she has this affinity for the universe in this film. They never explore that very well. The villains in this may be, even comparing it to Men in Black 2, may be the worst villains. I like Lay Twins. They're really good dancers. What was the point of their characters in the movie? You have Rebecca Ferguson, who is a really good actress. She didn't do anything. Why was she cast? Yes, she was fun for the 5 minutes she was in it, but what purpose did that story element serve to this movie? And at the end of the day, in the third act, you have something that could have been really exciting, but it's so predictable. The movie is the most predictable out of all 4 of the Men in Black movies. And the more I talk about it, the more I'm like, oh, maybe it worked less than I thought it worked, but I still had fun, right? Some of the jokes worked. It's entertaining in a blockbuster sense, but it never did anything beyond that, right? I don't think it's bad enough to be considered a bad movie, although, like I said, I get it. If you think this is a bad movie, I completely understand it. I don't think it is bad, even though it's pushing those boundaries. I just think it's and it's another forgettable blockbuster in 2019. But there it is, guys. There is my Men in Black tier list. This is the shortest tier list I believe I've done so far. 4 movies. It's not much going on in this video, but I want to see what you guys have to do in the comments below. Where are you placing these movies? What is your tier? And what is your ranking of all of the Men in Black films? Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Later on today, hopefully, another Netflix review, and then tomorrow morning, my tier list for all of the Marvel Netflix shows. Can't wait to talk about those. You guys are the absolute best, and I'll see you very soon.